Okay, we'll begin. My name is Jerry Garfinkel. I'm the treasurer of the Jewish Study Center, and I want to welcome you all to this class on Introduction to Kabbalah. I'm sure we'll all learn an awful lot. And since I'm treasurer, let me start by saying that the class is free. There's no need to pay tuition, but we do appreciate donations. No requirement, but it'd be nice. And if you want to donate, you can go to our website, www.jewishstudycenter.org, and you can click on donate, and you can donate by credit card, PayPal, or check. If you donate by check, it'll give you the, you check off check, it'll give you the address where to send it. Okay, now everybody is muted, including Jay, I think, but Jay can unmute himself. Let me say a little bit about the technical aspects. Since you're all muted, you can't ask questions by talking, but we do want your questions, we do want your comments. So write your comments and or questions in the chat, address it to everybody. Sometimes you ask a question, someone else will answer it, or someone else will comment on it, et cetera, et cetera. And as you probably all realize, this is being recorded. So after the class is over, I'm going to cut off the part of the recording that began before we started, and I will post it on YouTube. Then I will send an email to everybody who's registered on where the recording is. One other thing, I guess, is that I have put on the closed captions. So if you have a difficult time understanding my accent or Jay's, or you can look at the closed captions. You can also, if you want, get a full transcript by pressing on the bottom where it says more, and you can get yourself a transcript. Okay, I think that's all I need to say about technical points. So now let me introduce today's class on Introduction to Kabbalah, and the instructor is Jay McKrensky. Jay actually first learned about Kabbalah by taking a class here at the Jewish Study Center. Maybe one of you will, who knows? But not only did he take the class, but then he went on and went to universities and other places to learn a lot more about Kabbalah. And he actually started teaching Kabbalah at various places, including St. Mary's College in Southern Maryland. So, and then he'll tell you also, he actually has a weekly free class on Zoom. He'll tell you all about that. And then one other thing I want to mention is that a week from today, the same time, we're going to have a Kabbalistic Seder, Tu B'Shvat Seder, which Jay will be conducting. So you can all come to that also. You have to register for that separately, though. Okay, Jay. So I think I'm going to put you on now, and you can do your thing.
Okay. Can I use the gallery myself?
You can do whatever you want, Jay.
With you? Okay. Great. Because I can see more people.
I put the wrong, I made a mistake. I thought I put you on as a spotlight, but me on instead. What the hell?
Well, I just moved myself, so that left just you on spotlight. But you can still people can spotlight me.
I'm going to unspot myself. I don't have to be spotted.
Unless you want to. So thanks. And I will put myself back on gallery. But if anybody who wants to see me on speaker, just click speaker. This is actually part of a three-part series. We have basic introductory lecture today. And it's very condensed. So we only have about an hour to present this. And then a continuation of this in our Monday night class. So I encourage people to come on Monday, 6 p.m. this Monday, 6 to about 7:30. And we'll continue with the discussion of the symbolism and the Torah aspects of Zohar and the Kabbalistic interpretation of Zohar. And so you may want to come to that as a part 2 of the introduction. And after part 2, you'll be ready to actually join the class in following weeks. It's a free drop-in when you can, advanced class on Zohar. We have a couple of members of the class here. I see even on this page. And then the Tu B'Shvat Seder is something you don't want to miss. And I'm going to build up to explaining what that's about by the end of the hour here, or the hour and a half. So the first question is, what is Kabbalah? It's one of the most misunderstood terms in Jewish philosophy, Jewish religion, Jewish thought. It's an element of Jewish thought now in most universities. It's not a separate area. But there've been so many poor books written and poor teachers of Kabbalah and pseudo teachers of Kabbalah that aren't really teaching Kabbalah, just their own personal new age philosophy, that the term has become mixed up. What it is historically is a foundation for understanding most of Judaism, believe it or not. Kabbalah was the dominant philosophy of Judaism for 400 years, from about the 13th to the 18th century, where it became lost because it was forbidden to study by the rabbis of Poland. The one theory is that the rabbis were worried about Shabtai Tzvi's legacy, Sabbatianism, and Jacob Frank, who followed him, and the false messiahs. They're all into Kabbalah, and young people were flocking to these Kabbalah groups in the 1700s. So by the 1720s, Kabbalah, the rabbis felt this is just too dangerous, and they forbid it. But my own theory is that Kabbalah is inherently surreptitiously subversive. And I'm about to publish an article on that I'll share with anybody who's interested in it. Surreptitiously subversiveness is really what the Zohar is. It's subversive to the Midrash and to the literal understanding of Torah. But Kabbalah in practice is not magic. It is not superstition. After it fell out of use and awareness and knowledge in Judaism, just fell out of Judaism after the rabbis forbid the study of it within a generation. Even in rabbinical schools, even in Hasidic rabbinical schools and study groups and cheders, was forbidden to study or learn Kabbalah. So everything became lost until Gershom Scholem and other scholars began to revive it in the early 20th century, mid 20th century. And what we're discovering, and what a lot of my work, academic work, has been on is contemporary Kabbalah, and how Kabbalah has become, had been the foundation and is an explanation for almost everything that we do in Judaism. Pretty radical statement, but that's what I want to lecture on today. What Kabbalah is, what it means, and where it's going, where it should be going. So Kabbalah means, the word in Hebrew means a reception or receiving. It was been taken by scholars to mean a received tradition, a secret received tradition, a Kabbalah. But the term as it was used for my own academic research and as part of my dissertation, the term was used by the Kabbalists in the 12th and 13th century as personal receiving of God, that God is something flowing into us, in contrast to the traditional notion that God is outside of us, is transcendent, is removed, and we worship a God outside of us with all-knowing and all-powerful, with traits and attributes. Well, Maimonides reacted to that, and the core of Maimonidean philosophy and other philosophies of the 10th to the 12th century maintained that you should not or cannot give attributes to God. So one of the foundations of Kabbalah is that God is unknowable. Well, that's interesting. That begs the question of whether we can believe in God. God's unknowable. You can't know the source, but what we can know are emanations in the Neoplatonic sense, that God, this unknowable entity, force, whatever, emanates potencies into the world. That creation is not something that happened in 6 days, but it continues. As long as God is emanating into the world, God is in everything, in all creation. Panentheism, key philosophical term for Kabbalah, panentheism, that God flows into everything. So how does that translate to Judaism? Well, the idea that creation is ongoing means that God needs human beings, God, the unknowable source, in order to continue creation. He needs us, needs human beings, and we need God. This is basically the philosophy of Abraham Joshua Heschel, who was the topic of my first dissertation, that Abraham Joshua Heschel was still felt he was under the restriction on teaching, the ban on teaching Kabbalah, and he taught for years at Hebrew Union College and then Jewish Theological Seminary, and he never taught a course in Kabbalah. Asked lots of rabbis who studied under him at JTS, but his books are so Kabbalistic. His book about Shabbat, but particularly his book, that God in Search of Man, and the Man is Not Alone. We got the name of the second book. Man is not alone. We're not alone in the world. We need God, and God needs us to continue creation. And that's, to the Kabbalists and to the Zohar, that's a core theme of the Torah and of Psalms and Proverbs and most of the Tanakh, is that mutuality. So it's not a new idea to Judaism, but that's part of the surreptitiously subversive aspect of Kabbalah, historically and still today, is that the Zohar is an interpretation. The Zohar, which appeared in the late 13th century, late 1200s, but is a product of perhaps 200 years of literature, of work in this surreptitious style of symbolism that the Zohar is written in, which I'll get into on Monday, if you can make it on Monday, the whole world of Kabbalistic symbolism and code language. So So we are partners in ongoing creation. Creation is ongoing. And we receive emanations, a force flows from this unknowable source that we can know. We know them in ourselves. They act within us. Flows such as chokhmah, wisdom, and bina, intelligence or understanding. That's part of God flowing into Kabbalists. You start to see Kabbalah is not Jewish mysticism, but it's a foundation for Jewish mysticism. So Kabbalah is a philosophy of Judaism and a philosophy of religion, because there's a very strong Christian Kabbalistic tradition that came out of Judaism, Jewish Kabbalah, starting in the 15th and 16th centuries, and became more dominant in the Enlightenment and in Western Europe than Jewish Kabbalah, because Jewish Kabbalah by the 18th, 19th centuries almost passed out of existence. It became lost. But Christian Kabbalah became mainstream and became a major influence on modern philosophical thought and science. So what sort of mysticism becomes such an influence on modern science? That's a phenomenal question. Sir Isaac Newton was such a scholar of Kabbalah, he published more on Kabbalah than he did on science. And Yeats, the Kabbalist, Shakespeare, or the true Shakespeare, was a Kabbalist, and his wonderful plays, especially The Merchant of Venice, but many of his plays have some Kabbalistic themes in them. So what is it that we receive? We receive wisdom and intelligence. We receive the ability to be compassionate, be kind to others. That's a flow of God, chesed, that was not always in the world. That became a key theme to Kabbalists of the book of Genesis, and why Abraham was introduced into ongoing creation. Abraham represented the beginning of chesed in the world, although he was a failure at introducing it. It was a violent world, but he still became the representative of chesed. And Isaac became the representative of the complementary aspect of chesed, which is gevura, which is power. We need power. Our power to create comes from the unknowable source. And then Tiferet, represented by Jacob, the sixth category of emanation, it means holiness. Holiness is an entity, is a flow in and of itself, but holiness to Kabbalists means balance and harmony, and ecology, and oneness in the world. And the name of God associated with just that aspect is the Yud He Vav He, Adonai, the holy name, the YHVH, as I call it in English. The holy name of God, which is holiness, harmony, balance, which is sort of the nucleus of these 10 flows or emanations into us. And then the other flows that we can relate to, that we can receive, is the flow of being able to formulate principles and values and articulate our mission and purpose in life. That in and of itself is a standalone flow into us, an aspect of God, the unknowable source that comes to us. Then you have the eighth of these 10 categories, which is emotional motivation. You can't have the seventh, which is principles, purpose, and mission in life, meaning of life, in other words, without incentive to carry it out and motivation to carry it out. That's the Hod aspect of this, called Hod. And then the 9th of the 10th is the flow of life, of health, of need awareness, our ability to have needs, the foundation of the morning blessings in Judaism, called Yesod, which means foundation, the life force. And then finally, the 10th of these emanations is ability to feel God's presence itself, the ability to have a mystical experience. That's called the Shekhinah, as the name of God associated with this. So what I want to do is to share screen, and what I'm talking about is the first of the 2 handouts that everybody should have received. If you haven't received them, Jerry is putting the link in the box to the Google Drive where you can download them and print them out. And those 2 handouts is really a summary of what I'm talking about today. So let me pull that out. And here it is. This is not, this is the second one. Let me see if I can get to the first one. Here it is. Can you see this now in color? This is called the Tree of Life. And it's like,
yes.
You can see it? Yeah. And all of these colors are important as part of the symbolism code of Kabbalah. And as you see, there's 3 columns, 1, 2, and a middle column that sort of modulates between the right and the left. And what I just summarized very quickly, verbally, you can now see this tree. The Keter is the unknowable source, and that's the color black. Dark blue is wisdom, chokhmah, which is more than wisdom. It's imagination, it's insight. It's in Kabbalah described as a fast-flowing stream that flows into a sea called Bina, our intelligence, which then gestates. It becomes the womb of God, and out of that comes the 7 lower sfirot, out of Chokhmah, wisdom, and intelligence. When you think about it, that's a powerful philosophical concept, that we have wisdom, right brain, and we have intelligence, left brain. And there are 2 different aspects of the divine that flow into us. You can be very wise, but without wisdom, you really can't do much with it. I mean, you can be very understanding and intelligent is what I meant to say, but without wisdom, you can't do much with it. You can't be a partner in creation. Then you have chesed, which literally means greatness or kindness. Gedula means greatness, and chesed means kindness. It's all of everything, altruism, our conscience, every aspect of trying to be good. Not all people have it. And not all people have it equally. Some people have it not at all. But complementing that is power, is gevura on the left side, and modulating between the power, energy, strength of gevura that we need in creation is tiferet, harmony, balance, equilibrium, all of which mean holiness. So Kabbalah brings to Jewish prayer understanding of what holiness is. So much of prayer and Jewish practice is about holiness. And Kabbalah brings that to into the equation in a beautiful way. Then you have principles, netzach, as I mentioned, values, which also is called prophecy. And the ability to make laws. Moses becomes the forefather of Netzach in the world. And his partner, Hod, is, of course, Aaron, who brings motivating emotion into the world. But it all comes together. But all of the Sfirot, all is a code second name for Yesod, for foundation, Hakol, the all, because all of them flow and gather in Yesod, which is not only life, awareness, and instincts and drives, but the concept of righteousness. Through all, we can make the world right. We can rebalance the world. And finally, everything flows into, all of these forces flow like lights, like light river, like electrons, into Malchut, which literally means sovereignty. But it actually means Kabbalistically God's presence. So you have the names of God associated with this. El is Chesed, the name El, God alone. Elohim is Gevura. And YHVH, or Yud He Vav He, is Tiferet, holiness of God. Adonai Tzivaot and Elohim Tzivaot are Netzach and Hod, the law of forces. And when you think about it, our principles and mission and purpose and our motivation together is really where we become co-creators. And Tzivaot means forces. El Chai, the God of life, and El Shaddai, the God of nurturing, of protection, is Yesod. And Malchut is Shekhinah. It's the presence, the God that we can feel and experience. So you see how the code language is associated with each of these 10 sfirot, particularly the lower 9, because the top one is unknowability, called the infinite, the Ein Sof. But the symbolism is what is one of the beautiful aspects in terms of interpretation of Kabbalah, of Torah, of prayer. And names of God are part of that, but also the forefathers. Abraham is Chesed, Isaac is Gevura, and Jacob is Tiferet. And guess who Yesod is? With the all, where everything comes together, where righteousness is, who truly becomes a co-creator and saves the world, is Joseph. So this becomes the theme of the whole book of Genesis. This continuing creation of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, leading and culminating in Joseph. And then in Exodus, Moses and Aaron becomes principles, values, lawmaker, Moses, and the motivator, Aaron, who form a team to coalesce a people. Okay. So that's a lot to cover. So I want to step back. So what is to the question of what is all this for? Why? What are the themes? Well, there's 4 themes of the Zohar and 4 themes of applications of all of this in Judaism. And that's what's on this right-hand side. And they represent different levels of the Sfirot, different worlds, Olamot. The first is that this gives us the ability to be partners in ongoing creation. That's what I call the P level. The H gives us holiness. Okay? Holiness, this is the Sphira of holiness, and this is our ability to receive and feel and become holy. So every Shabbat, we start with a Kiddush, and every holiday. The Kiddush the cup of wine, which is Gevura, which we hold Kabbalistically in the palm of our hand. I don't have a Kiddush cup, but I have some salt here, like this, okay? You've probably seen people do that. That's that's very Kabbalistic. It's the first page of the Zohar, holding the Kiddush cup that way. And those five fingers represent kindness, power, principles, motivation, and need awareness, the five fingers. And then your palm is holding in perfect balance this full cup of wine. If you've ever been to a Hasidic Shabbat, Kabbalah Shabbat, or Shabbat meal, and they do the Kiddush, they balance that in their hand. If I have my Kiddush cup. Here we go. To the rim. A ritual of Kabbalah that pervades Judaism, the concept of the Kiddush. What does the Kiddush do? It opens the gate, it opens the flow of energies into us, of divine, of God flowing into us. Then we can worship God flowing in. And what we can do that has to do with holiness, the Kiddush is all about, means holy. Kiddushim, it means making holy. We're making ourselves holy by opening the gates, particularly of holiness, to flow into our ability to feel and receive holiness. Malchut. So every holiday begins with making it holy and ourselves holy. And the core prayer of the Kabbalah Shabbat service, the receiving of Shabbat, but the Kabbalah of Shabbat service that starts Friday nights is L'chadodi. Hardly anyone understands what that means, because the translations are so bad. A beautiful song, beautiful poem, even if you don't understand it in the Hebrew, but it's all about L'chadodi, go forth, Tiferet, my beloved, Tiferet, and find your bride, the Sabbath bride, Malchut. Pnei Shabbat, the openings, the faces of Shabbat, Kabbalah, we must receive. And the effect of that is that we merge the two. We unite Tiferet and Malchut, the bride and her husband. Yesod is the drives, the instincts, the sexual drive that brings this sexual union, this intercourse between Tiferet and Malchut. Zohar is very explicitly sexual in how it describes this in other Kabbalistic writings. So you can begin to see some of the influences of Kabbalah on Judaism, just on the Shabbat. Then you get to the level of ethics, the third meaning of all of this and theme in both the Zohar and in Jewish practice, ethics. This is a foundation for ethics, because you have three columns here. You have wisdom, kindness, and principles on the right. And then on the left side, you have intelligence, raw intelligence and power and emotion. You can start to imagine, what if you got out of balance and you had no wisdom, but you had intelligence in how to build gas chambers and destroy people and civilizations. And you had absolutely no compassion for others. You have no ability to feel another's pain, but you have unlimited power of a dictatorship. And you have absence of principles, no law in society. And you have emotions of jealousy, hatred, negative emotions. Hod comes from the term, the Kabbalists say, of hoda'ah, gratefulness. And that's the core of Hasidism, to try to maintain that aspect of Hod all day long and at every woken moment. With gratefulness for being alive, thankfulness to God, thankfulness for receiving the Sfirot. It's why there's so many blessings all day long in Judaism when we eat, when we wake up in the morning. But if you have left side without the right side, then you have an explanation of the Holocaust and how that can happen. That potentiality is always there. The evil inclination is called the Yetzer Hara, always pulling us to the left, out of balance. Fortunately, we have Tiferet, holiness, which is balance and oneness, that brings everything back into harmony, along with Yesod, which is righteousness, among other things, to make the world right. Okay? And you have the presence of God all modulating in the middle. That's called teshuvah, repentance. And this is the theme in Kabbalah of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So you see how this cerebral philosophy of Judaism in combination with this theology of these aspects of God really adds to the meaning of Jewish holidays. Another aspect besides repentance in Jewish practice of the Yetzer Hara, evil inclination, and sin is on Passover and Haggadah. It's all about evil inclination, because we eliminate evil inclination when, according to the Talmud and the earliest writings and Jewish law on Passover, the evil inclination is chametz. If we eliminate chametz for this 1 week, then we can celebrate the left side. Drink 4 cups of wine, 1 for each of these levels, each of these worlds. And we ask the question, why is this night different from all other nights? Manishtana halala hazeh, mikol halelot. Manishtana, why? What's so different? Well, for one thing, we can lean to the left as we drink wine. We can lean to the left side without worrying about falling over or being overcome by the evil inclination. We can lean to the left and celebrate our bina, our intelligence, and celebrate our power, and celebrate our motivation, even if we're angry enough to revolt against the Romans or revolt against the Republicans, whatever. That was a joke, everybody. I hope there are no Republicans here. But the theme of the Haggadah is the essence of that story at the beginning of the rabbis talking all night about the going out of Egypt until their disciples came and said, it's time for the Shema. Well, these were the same rabbis that were in the Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome. The theme is sometimes we need to control the evil inclination because we need our intelligence, our power, and our emotions in order to create a better world, to co-create, partnering in creation, in order to make holiness in the world, in order to effect rebalancing, teshuvah, return to balance. We need the left side to do that. And Passover reminds us of that. And then the fourth use of this is the D. This is P-H-E-D, that I pronounce as fed, because it's all part of providing us with nutrition, and feeding us is a metaphor that's used in the Zohar for understanding the flow into us. It's like being fed, these energy forces. But this one is the most interesting because this discovery and revelation are the same thing in Hebrew. And I like the term discovery more than revelation, but it's the same thing. When you bring wisdom that God gives us into our understanding, then we can discover new things and articulate them through Netzach and be motivated to implement them through Hod. Whether it's a new discovery to cure cancer or COVID, or it's a new design for a building that has wisdom in it, or it's wisdom in how to build an ethical and holy family. Anything that we do has the potential of wisdom or lack thereof and intelligence. You bring one into the other and you have da'at, knowledge, as an outcome. But you can't, unless you have netzach, the Moses aspect of that, you can't turn that into principles, values, purpose, meaning of life. And without motivation, you can't actualize it. So that's a summary of the tree of life, as this is called. Okay. That brings us to rituals. And I want to keep this up for a moment. How does this translate to typical rituals of Judaism? Well, look at the wedding, for instance, the wedding ritual. It's traditional for the bride to circle the groom 7 times. And in modern weddings, it's egalitarian. Sometimes each circles the other 7 times, or 3, and then they both circle together. But why do they circle? Well, this is why, because each of these 7s, and all the 7s in Judaism, relate to these lower 7 that come out of the womb of Bina, of intelligence. The first circle is the circle of bringing kindness and unselfishness into the relationship. The second circle is bringing power and strength and energy into the relationship. This is part of uniting and becoming one soul. Tiferet is bringing, which literally means beauty, but it means balance, harmony, oneness into the relationship, and holiness. Netzach, which means endurance, perseverance, but of course it really means values, principles, and the ability to define prophecy and define mission. Bring that into relationship. What's the purpose of our being married together in this new union? Hod, bring the love into the relationship. Crucial ingredient, Yesod, the sex into the relationship. And the presence of God, Malchut, that's the 7 circlings. And similarly, there are 7 hakafot, circlings in Sukkot, which is a thoroughly Kabbalistic holiday, actually. You're building a sukkah. So you're co-creating a sukkah to start, right after you've received a new soul, a new renewed soul out of Yom Kippur. And each day in the sukkah, in this magical sukkah, you wave the lulav and the etrog, which is a whole course in and of itself of what the lulav means, the central column, and the etrog is bina, and the waving is in 6 directions, and you're bringing the flow, the force. It's a Jewish meditation to go in every day with your lulav and your etrog, and spend 10 minutes or an hour feeling the flow coming in. But each day highlights a different lower sphera. The 7 days, 8 days outside of Israel, but 7 days to the holiday. The first day is the day of Abraham, which is the day of Chesed. We're bringing Chesed in, which is to the south. You face south, you bring in Chesed. You face north, and you draw in Gevura with 3 draw ins with this magical wand of the lulav and the etrog. You face east, you bring in holiness, Tiferet. You face Netzach, then you face south, west, and you bring in Yesod and Malchut. And what I like to do facing east is also bring in the Chokmah and the northeast and the Netzach, the south. This is the south, right. On the south side, I bring in the Chokmah and the Netzach. And on the north side, I bring in the Bina and the Hod. So I get to meditate and draw in all of those potencies. So that's another 7. 7 days of Shiva. Each day, you become stronger and stronger. The first day is all giving. Shiva, the 7 days after the funeral, of recuperation and of mourning. So the first day, everyone is giving us a day of chesed, total unselfishness. And the days before, in cleaning the body, in preparing the body, the deceased can't thank anyone. That's giving, the highest level of giving, where you can't be thanked. You can't. And the second day, you're getting a little bit of power back, be able to care for yourself. The third day, a little bit feeling some holiness, and it's getting a little bit of balance returning. Then principles on the 5th day, and the 6th day is emotions coming back, positive emotions. You can smile again, maybe. And the 6th day, life is returning, a feeling of being alive oneself. And then finally, on the 7th day of Shiva, can you actually feel the presence of God again? So it's a framework in Kabbalah for recovering and for mourning. Okay. So finally, let me cover one more thing. And that is the holiday that's coming up this next Wednesday. The holiday called Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat, the New Year of Trees. What is the tree that the Kabbalists are celebrating? This is the tree. This is the tree of life. It's called Eitz Chaim. And all its pathways are peace, as we sing when we return the Torah. And this is a holiday of refreshing, restoring the flow, renewing the flow into us. It's a new year of the tree, which means a new year of the flow into us. And we celebrate it by 4 glasses of wine just on Pesach that open the gates, open the flow, and they celebrate each of these glasses, each of these 4 levels, as we rise up through the branches of the tree to finally, in the 4th cup of wine, reach the highest level of Atzilut, of Chokhmah, wisdom with Bina, and can discover new things about ourselves and about the world. And the and between each of these cups of wine, we'll be eating ceremoniously different types of fruit. And the tastings, each tasting brings in a different sphira. It helps us rise up from Shekhinah and awareness of God to Yesod, to Hod, to Netzach. First one from Malchut to this triad of Netzach, Hod, Yesod, principles, emotions, and need awareness. And that's fruit that's hard to get into with an inedible outside, like a coconut or like nuts. You need a nutcracker to get into it. That's the first category of fruit that we eat and taste. We do a tasting for Yesod, for Hod, and for Netzach, one for each one, and a meditation on each. And in the Seder we're going to do next week, the Machayak Klezmer Band is going to be playing for each of those meditative tastings. And then the next glass of wine, the next meditative tasting is a fruit that has an inedible core, like a peach, that you can't eat the core of it, or an avocado. And that brings us up to the final third glass of wine. As you rise up eating the third triad, we eat fruit like berries and pears that we can eat all of. It's totally edible. And that brings us up to the highest level. So you got to experience it to see the meaning of it. And there, now we can see each other again. And I want to leave some time for some questions and discussion. It's just running on an hour, so it gives us about 15 minutes to for any questions. I think everything should make perfect sense, right? So what we covered is Kabbalah as a philosophy and theology of receiving God, of praying to God flowing in as opposed to outside of us, as something that has attributes. God the source has no attributes, but what flows into us are the attributes of God. The wisdom, the intelligence, the motivation, the power. And we talked about those 4 types that we just went through, what I call the Fed, 4 types of receiving, categories of receiving, partnering in creation, holiness, ethics, and discovery. We talked about the 10 channels of receiving, the 10, I didn't really talk about the name. They're called Sefirot, from the Samach Papes, Reish, root, Sefer, book, Mispar, number, the Saper, to tell, telling, reading, and mathematics, the core of creation, these Sefirot. But it also means in Greek, the spheres, where the term probably originated from the Greek. But there are 10 of them, and each are clusters of meanings, related meanings, and clusters of symbols around each. And those symbols are what we'll get to in the class on Monday, because that's core to understanding the Zohar and Torah. Because Torah on the surface is only the clothing of Torah to Kabbalists. It's what's under the surface that is discovery about the relationship of these Sefirot to us these flows to us and how we can strengthen them, how they come into the world in Torah in an imperfect way, which teaches us about the imperfection of the forefathers, in particular Moses, which is surreptitiously subversive. How could these Kabbalists criticize Moshe Rabbeinu, the rabbis would say? Yet Moshe Rabbeinu, in the culmination of the book of Numbers, becomes a mass murderer in the genocide of the Midianites and the Amorites. A chapter of Numbers that is not taught in Hebrew school and Sunday school, but the Zohar surreptitiously, subversively talks about evil inclination, talks about the meaning behind that. That's the greatest example of surreptitious subversiveness that Kabbalah brings to the Jewish tradition. Yet it becomes the essence of Jewish spirituality, how we deal with that imperfection in the world. So come to class on Monday, and as part of the follow-up to this, Jerry will send out the link. I'll give him the link for Monday's session, which is on my own Zoom account. And of course, there's no charge. And then come next Wednesday to the Seder, and there's also no charge. And donations are welcome to both the Jewish Study Center, which is a wonderful institution. It's now becoming a worldwide Jewish education institution with Zoom, and to my own organization that I recently founded to promote contemporary Kabbalah and the teaching of Kabbalah to children and the teaching of everything that we've talked about today, the different levels of Judaism and what the Judaism really means. I've written 2 books on that subject. And so the purpose of this new foundation, nonprofit organization called the Contemporary Kabbalah Institute is to promote that. And that's the sponsor of the Monday class and the free classes that I do, like this one. And we'll be applying for grants and trying to take on some projects in Jewish education. So go to contemporarykabbalah.org to get more information about the CKI, the Contemporary Kabbalah Institute. And if you'd like, we would really welcome any contributions there. So that's my summary. Jerry, did I skip anything?
Okay. First of all, let me say that after the recording is posted, I'll send an email to everybody with the location of the recording, but I'll also include other information, like where Jay's with the website for Jay's organization, if you want to contribute to that, etc. And some other information that Jay may give. Like I'll also include where to go to Jay's Monday evening classes. There'll be various information in that email. So that's the first thing. Second, there are a number of interesting questions in the chat. And one that I was particularly interested in, that I had a similar question myself, is why did the rabbis first prohibit learning Kabbalah, studying Kabbalah, and then they said, okay, if you're 40 years old and you're male and you're Orthodox and you're observant, then you can study Kabbalah. Why did they restrict Kabbalah so much?
Yeah, and I partially addressed that. That's a very good question. And one theory is that they were concerned about the proliferation of young people going to these Kabbalah groups that were associated with the false Messiah movements and with all sorts of radicalism in Judaism that the rabbis did not like. Remember, this is the 1700s. Sabtai Tzvi really was in 1655, in the mid 17th century. This is a good time after he converted to Islam, and but yet his movement continued into the 1720s. I think that's pseudo reason. I think the real reason is this surreptitious subversiveness. How could you maintain that creation is ongoing? It's 6 days. How could you maintain that the that the world is not predetermined? The mazala, the constellations. I mean, the constellations uh, mean destiny. You have that's what the rabbis were teaching at the time. Kabbalah teaches the opposite, that mazala is from the word mazal, which means luck, but also means flow, from nazal, the root for flow, and for river. And when we say Mazel Tov, it doesn't mean good luck. It means may the force be with you.
Relating to what you're just saying, you're giving definitions. Someone asked, what's the definition of Shiva? I mean, we know what Shiva is. I presume we know what it is. But where does the word come from?
Yeah, I don't really know where the word originates, whether it's in the Mishnah, but it's related to sitting, sitting Shiva.
Okay. The other thing relating to what you were saying earlier, Jay, about the false messiahs, etc. What is the difference, with the question, what's the difference between the Jewish Kabbalah that you're talking about and the Christian Kabbalah that you say also exists at the same time? How do they differ?
Well,
do they?
They do differ because Christianity, particularly Catholicism, is about the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. So the Father, in my mind, now that's the difference of opinion and over the history of Christian Kabbalah as to where to associate those elements of Christianity as Sphirot, just like the different names of God represent different Sphirot in Judaism. Same thing in Christian Kabbalah. The Father is the unknowable source. Balance and holiness is the Son, Jesus. And the Holy Ghost, well, that's the definition of the Shekhinah, the aspect of God that we could feel.
Okay, another question unrelated to that. Someone asked a very specific question about Pritzker's commentary on the Kabbalah, and the question was, do you feel that that's an authentic, good one, or is there a better English commentary than Pritzker?
The only better English commentary than Pritzker is the commentary that comes out of our class on Mondays, which is really phenomenal. I'm learning from it every week, and but I think that's another way of saying that I think it's outstanding. That Daniel Matt actually invited me to participate in his committee in translating because I'm an authority on Netzach and Hod. And that turns out to be, I think, in my mind, the weakness of the notes. Some of the notes are very, very strong and so well researched that that's really helped me on this paper, this research study I'm doing on subversiveness and in the Zohar, surreptitious subversiveness, because Danny gives a lot of references to where a particular idea that's being talked about by the Kabbalists is discussed in the Midrash or in the Talmud itself, and otherwise, without knowing that reference, you don't know what it's being subversive of. But what I've been doing is going back to those references and seeing that the Zohar is very creatively, very surreptitiously undermining that traditional, historic, literal translation. I mean, interpretation of that particular Torah passage. So I think it's a marvelous edition. It's the best that there is in English, for sure. But the certainly question on some of the interpretations.
Well, I mean, I'm keeping everyone muted throughout the presentation for people to unmute themselves now in particular. Patricia Brody wants to say something, so you want to speak,
Thank you,
you may,
Patricia.
you may do so.
She's a member of our group on Monday.
I try to be. I just wrote it in the chat, Jerry and Jay, because you were asking earlier about why Kabbalah was forbidden to be learned by the young men, and certainly forbidden to women. So it was only for males over 40, observant, etc. But I just learned when I went to an art exhibit, well, kind of an exhibit at a museum in New York City, the Morgan Library and Museum, that the guy who first translated the Old Testament into English was arrested and accused of treason by Henry VIII, of all people. And he was executed.
Wow.
And his name, I had heard of him, but I didn't know the whole story, William Tyndall, because I think they call some of the Bibles Tyndall's Bible or something. But anyway, it turns out, I can't understand it myself, but it's obviously about power, because the church didn't want commoners to learn to read. They didn't want them to be literate, because then they would lose power if people. So knowledge, if you want to say, is power. And Henry VIII, of course, he was the one who broke with the church anyway, for his own reasons. So I found it very ironic that he was the one to arrest or, condemn this guy, William Tyndall. It's a fascinating exhibit and story. It's in paintings, medieval paintings.
I believe that other translators into other languages were also probably executed. They certainly were harassed. I mean, but English, I mean, obviously the British king would be the one to take care of the translation into English.
You mean it would have to be him?
Well, I mean, he's the head of the government.
Oh, right. Right. Well, yeah. Oh, and by the way, Tyndall had studied the Hebrew, he called the Hebrew, and the what's the other, Greek, whatever it was in. What was the Old Testament in the 1400s?
The Septuagint was in Greek.
So it's said he studied Hebrew. He translated from Hebrew and Greek. He was a very learned scholar. So I don't know if there's a connection, but it seemed like there might be, between why there would be a what do you call it? A prohibition? No, what's the word?
The study of the Zohar, not the study of the Torah or the Bible. The prohibition on studying Kabbalah or teaching. It was really a prohibition on teaching Kabbalah.
When was that?
That was 1723.
Right. So that's way after this.
Yeah.
This other kind of prohibition.
Was it 15th century, you said, or 16th century?
No, earlier, whenever Henry VIII was. 1300s, 1400s, medieval.
Really? Yeah, wow. Yeah.
It wasn't that early. He was father of Elizabeth, wasn't he?
Yes,
And,
Elizabeth.
so it's probably 16th century, I would assume.
1500s.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for bringing that to our attention, Patricia. That's great.
I thought it was interesting. There's also in the exhibit, interestingly enough, there's another exhibit next to this one in the small museum. It's a great museum, great exhibitions. They have something called Medieval Money and Morality. And they just, you really, it's in paintings. You see I might have tried to send you some pictures, Jay, but I'm not sure. You see kind of the earlier origins of anti-Jew. They have paintings of the Jewish moneylenders in medieval terms with demons and, well, anyway, so it's pretty interesting.
Thanks.
Okay, sorry to go off subject.
That's very interesting. Thanks for bringing this up. And
Henry VIII was the first half of the 16th century, 1509 to 15.
that was later in 16th century. Yeah.
16th century.
Yeah. Interesting. Any other questions that people have? Raise your hand. I see Rhoda.
Yes, you focused on the left side of the tree, and you said if as you went down and put pieces together, you said that's how you get to genocide or Nazism. If you go to the right side of the tree, does that mean that you are all in your head and that you aren't operating in the real world and having a real world effect?
No, I don't see that connection. Let me try to put full. Now I can see people better. I had a half screen. Okay. No, but many people ask the related question that, why do you need a left side? And the Talmud asks that question. Without evil inclination, the potential for evil inclination, then we would never build a home. We would never get married. We would not create anything. You need the left side. You can't build with the right side only. But none of this is all in the head. It's all flowing into us. In fact, the parts of the body are loci. Is that the word for receiving? So the right arm is chesed. The left arm is gevura, is kindness, goodness. The left arm is power. And same thing with the right brain and the left brain is chokhmah and bina, and the right leg and the left leg is netzach and hod, principles and emotions. So you definitely can feel the flow as part of one's meditation. You want to feel the flow coming into that part of the body associated with that sphira. And what I didn't get to today that we could talk about on Monday is the other handout, which is the glossary, which is years and years of work on my part to identify the various code language. The multitude of names and verbs, but also of nouns, adjectives, pronouns that are associated with each of the 10 sefirot. And you can see there there's two parts. One is divided by sefirah, by each category of emanation, and the other, the second part of that exhibit is by category of type, like names of God, colors, forefathers, parts of the body. And so I encourage people to take a look at that, and things will make a lot more sense. But that is really helpful in understanding prayer, whether it's Christian prayer, right, Patricia, or Jewish prayer. And that's been a focus this year in the last few weeks. We're focusing now less on Zohar study and more on Siddur and prayer book study. What's the Kabbalistic meaning of each prayer?
I've sent the two attachments as attachments in today's email. Some people may have registered very late. If you don't have it and you can't go to the folder where they are also, give me an email and I'll send you more copies.
Yeah.
And thank you, Jay. I think people really appreciate learning about this. And some people obviously know more than others. A lot of you know a lot more than I do, certainly. But I think we've all learned something. And, you know, again, in my email, after the recording is posted, you'll have the link to get to Jay's Monday class, and also how to get to Jay's website on his new Kabbalah organization. And I hope to see many of you next week at the Kabbalistic Tu B'Shvat Seder. And then later on, week after that, is a very different class about Jack Ruby and his Jewish, you know, aspects. About some things he did was related to his Judaism. So thank you again, Jay, and I like not a nice questions people put in. So I think we'll close now, unless you have a final word you want to say, Jay.
No, I just want to thank everybody for coming, and I hope that this stimulated your interest in learning more about Kabbalah.
As I said, Jay began his learning of Kabbalah through the Jewish Studies Center. Maybe,
Yeah, that was just last month.
maybe the same.
That was about 40 years ago when we started the Jewish Studies Center.
Yeah, well, you know.
Yeah.
We'll spend all the time. Anyway, goodbye, everyone. I hope to see you next week.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you, Jay.